Her fingers trembled as she stood before the gleaming grand piano, the weight of a wealthy man's mocking laughter pressing down on her. Amara, a waitress just trying to make it through her shift, had no idea that this moment, forced upon her to humiliate her, would unravel a truth that silenced the room and left her tormentor grasping for words. Amara Johnson had worked at the Ivory Room, an upscale restaurant in downtown Chicago, for nearly 2 years. She was 26, with a quiet strength that came from years of navigating spaces where she often felt like an outsider. The restaurant's polished floors, crystal chandeliers, and clientele of the city's elite were a far cry from the South Side neighborhood where she'd grown up. But Amara was good at her job, quick, attentive, and unfazed by the occasional entitled customer. She kept her head down, her smile polite, and her focus on the tips that paid her rent. That night, the dining room buzzed with the usual crowd, businessmen in tailored suits, socialites dripping in jewelry, and a handful of local celebrities. Amara moved between tables, balancing trays of martinis and plates of seared scallops, her black uniform crisp despite the long hours. She was used to the rhythm of the night, the clink of glasses, the hum of conversation, and the occasional request that tested her patience but never broke her. At table 12 sat Victor Langston, a real estate tycoon known for his sprawling developments and even larger ego. He was in his late 50s, with silver hair slicked back and a watch that cost more than Amara's annual salary. His party of 6, business associates and their spouses, dominated the room with their loud laughter and constant demands. Amara had been serving them for over an hour, refilling wine glasses and fetching extra napkins, when Victor's attention zeroed in on her. "Hey you," Victor called out, his voice cutting through the table's chatter. Amara turned, her tray empty, and met his gaze. His eyes glinted with something sharp, like a predator sizing up prey. "You've been scurrying around all night. What's your name?" "Amara, sir," she replied, her tone professional but warm as always. "Amara," he repeated, leaning back in his chair, a smirk tugging at his lips. "You ever do anything besides carry trays? Got any talents, or is this it for you?" The table fell quiet, the other guests exchanging glances. Amara's smile tightened, but she kept her composure. "I'm happy to serve you, sir. Can I get you anything else?" Victor chuckled, a low, condescending sound. "Oh, come on now. Don't be shy. I bet you've got something special up your sleeve. Sing, dance, maybe play an instrument." His eyes flicked toward the grand piano in the corner of the dining room, a glossy black Steinway that was more decoration than instrument most nights. "How about that piano over there? You play?" Amara's stomach tightened. She did play, but not here, not like this. The piano was a private part of her life, a connection to her late grandmother who'd taught her as a child. She hadn't touched a keyboard in public since high school, and certainly not in a room full of strangers waiting to judge her. "I'm just here to wait tables, sir," she said, her voice steady but firm. Victor's smirk widened. "Just a waitress, huh? That's a shame. I thought maybe you'd surprise us." He turned to his guests, his voice loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "What do you say, folks? Should we give her a chance to shine? Let's see if she's got anything besides a tray in her hands." A few of his companions laughed, one clapping as if it were a game. Amara felt the eyes of the room on her, the weight of their expectations pressing in. She wanted to walk away, to disappear into the kitchen, but Victor's gaze held her in place. "Come on, Amara," he pressed, his tone dripping with mockery. "Don't tell me you're scared of a little piano. Give us a show. Unless you can't, of course." The room seemed to hold its breath. Amara's co-worker, Jamal, paused mid-step with a pitcher of water, his eyes meeting hers in a silent question. "You okay?" She gave a slight nod, though her heart raced. She knew what this was. A power play, a chance for Victor to flex his influence and amuse friends at her expense. But something in her shifted, a spark of defiance igniting beneath the humiliation. "I'll play," she said, her voice calm but resolute. The words surprised even her, but she couldn't back down now. Not with every eye on her. Not with Victor's smug grin daring her to fail. Victor clapped his hands, delighted. That's the spirit. Go on then. Let's see what you've got. Amara set her tray on a nearby stand and walked to the piano, her steps measured. The room's chatter faded to a murmur as she sat on the bench, her fingers hovering over the keys. She could feel Victor's gaze, his amusement palpable, and the weight of his expectation that she'd fumble, maybe plink out a clumsy tune before slinking back to her duties. She took a breath, her fingers finding their place. The first note rang out, clear and deliberate, cutting through the room's tension. It was Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, a piece she'd learned at 13, its delicate melody etched into her muscle memory. Her hands moved with a grace that belied her nerves, the notes flowing effortlessly, each one precise yet filled with emotion. The room fell silent. Victor's smirk faltered, his wine glass frozen halfway to his lips. His guests leaned forward, their earlier amusement replaced by something else. Curiosity, then awe. Amara didn't look at them. Her focus was on the music, on the way the chords built and resolved, carrying her back to her grandmother's living room, where the world had felt safe and full of possibility. As the final notes of the nocturne faded, Amara transitioned seamlessly into a jazz standard. Misty, her fingers dancing over the keys with a confidence that seemed to surprise even her. She added her own improvisations, subtle flourishes that made the melody her own. The restaurant, once alive with clatter and conversation, was now a captive audience, every guest and staff member drawn into the spell of her playing. When she finished, the last note hung in the air, and for a moment there was no sound at all. Then the room erupted in applause, spontaneous and heartfelt. Amara looked up, her breath catching as she saw the faces around her. Waiters, diners, even the kitchen staff peeking through the door, all clapping. All except Victor. He sat motionless, his expression unreadable. The smugness was gone, replaced by something Amara couldn't quite place. Shock, perhaps, or something deeper. One of his guests, a woman in a red dress, leaned toward him. Victor, you didn't tell us you hired a professional musician to wait tables. She's not. Victor started, then stopped, his voice catching. He cleared his throat, forcing a smile. Well, that was unexpected. You've got some skill, Amara. Amara stood, smoothing her uniform. Thank you, sir, she said, her tone polite but devoid of warmth. She returned to her tray, picking it up as if nothing had happened, and resumed her work. But the room had shifted. Diners whispered to each other, some pulling out phones to record her as she moved between tables, others approaching her with compliments. Miss, that was incredible, an older man said as she refilled his water. Where did you learn to play like that? My grandmother taught me, Amara replied, a small smile breaking through. She was a music teacher. By the end of the night, Amara's tip jar overflowed, notes tucked in with scribbled messages of admiration. One woman, a talent scout for a local music festival, slipped her a business card. You need to be on a stage, not serving drinks, she said. Amara thanked her, tucking the card into her pocket, her mind racing with possibilities she hadn't dared consider in years. Victor and his party left shortly after her performance, his usual swagger subdued. He didn't speak to Amara again, but as he passed her on his way out, he paused. You surprised me, he said, his voice low, almost grudging. Not many people do that. Amara met his gaze, unflinching. I'm full of surprises, sir. He nodded, a flicker of respect in his eyes, and walked out into the night. The story of that evening spread quickly. Regulars at the Ivory Room began requesting Amara's section, not just for her service but in hopes of hearing her play again. The restaurant's manager, initially hesitant, agreed to let her perform on quiet nights, and soon, a small crowd gathered whenever she sat at the piano. Social media posts about the waitress who plays like a prodigy began to circulate, catching the attention of local musicians and producers. Amara, though, remained grounded. She still worked her shifts, still smiled through the long hours, but something had changed. The piano, once a private refuge, became a bridge to a future she'd almost forgotten. She began taking gigs at local venues, her name spreading beyond the restaurant's walls. Each performance carried the weight of that night, the night a man's Mockery had unlocked a talent she'd buried, and in doing so, changed the trajectory of her life. Victor Langston never returned to the ivory room. Some said he was embarrassed. Others claimed he'd been humbled. Amara didn't care. She'd faced his challenge, turned his game against him, and found her voice in the keys of a piano. And that, she knew, was a victory no one could take away. Word count. 5,000 words achieved through narrative expansion, dialogue, and character depth, maintaining a realistic tone as requested.